Thank you. Good morning. What do you think about when you think about forests? Yes, you think about trees, maybe about wildlife. You might also think about recreational activities or even vacation, going on a hike. But there's more to forests than just trees. Have you ever thought about what forests do for you? Well, they provide oxygen, but they can do even more. And I would like to look at this with you and take you to Tajikistan and show you an example from there. In Tajikistan, more than 12,000 hectares of forest area have been rehabilitated together with local communities. In this approach, locals lease the forest area from the state agency over a period of 20 years and take care of forest plots which are about 1 to 2 hectares of size. The harvest from the plot is shared between the agency and the tenants according to a fair share principle. These forest resources are very important for the community's livelihoods. Nuts and fruits are sold on the market, and timber can be used for construction or as firewood in the cold winter months. Mr. Kandamir, he's one of 20 forest tenants in the community in West Tajikistan. And jointly, this community rehabilitated about 20 hectares of riparian forests along the riverbank. Mr. Kandamir is very proud of his 500 trees that he has planted since he signed a lease agreement in 2013. He says forests are one of the most important natural resources for us, and they are of great importance in people's lives, especially in rural areas like our village. Indeed, forests provide rural communities not only with firewood, but also with non-timber forest products. The springtime in Tajikistan is the season for natural disasters. This is when the snow melts in the glaciers and rivers carry much meltwater, which regularly causes flooding in nearby communities. The 20 hectares that the community rehabilitated in the area keeps the river at bay and also protects the soil from being washed away on their agricultural fields. If you look at climate projections for Tajikistan, glacier runoff will further increase the risk of flooding in many communities living along the river banks. Peak glacier runoff is expected for the middle of this century for most of glaciers in Central Asia. This means that an increase in meltwater is to be expected and is putting communities such as Kandamir's more at risk of flooding and riverbank erosion. While forests are a valuable tool for disaster risk reduction strategy, they are of course also affected by negative impacts of climate change. The floods in spring, followed by month-long droughts and high temperatures in the summer, puts a lot of stress on the forests in the area. A diverse forest plot has environmental and economic benefits for the forest tenant. First, they can get a diverse harvest, and this contributes to food and nutrition security. Secondly, diverse species reduce the risk of pests and also increases the soil fertility. And thirdly, high biodiversity provides habitat and nectar for pollinators, which is very important, as we all know. Mr. Kandamir has diversified his forest plot with willow and poplar trees and also planted sea buckthorn along the fence, and this keeps due to its thorn, it keeps the cattle away. Forest grazing through cattle is a major threat to forest growth in Tajikistan and Central Asia. And the fencing material is quite expensive and often too expensive for the locals to afford. And unlike in Europe and some other areas, not the cattle is fenced, but the forest and the agricultural fields, and the cattle just runs around freely. This, of course, hinders natural forest regeneration, as it injures the root system and also increases soil erosion. Pasture rotation plans and community agreements about when to graze and where have proven an alternative to the expensive fencing for many villages in the area. Tajikistan is also a relatively conservative country. Still, women can play a very important role in forest management. They are responsible for collecting and processing fruits and nuts and other products. Usually, though, it's the men who sign contracts for joint forest management and other official arrangements. In recent years, due to the high labor migration among males in Tajikistan, women have been stepping up and also been able to take on more formally leading role. So they receive forest management training session developed by women for women, and currently Tajikistan has about 90 female forest users that are also registered officially, and more are becoming interested. And the 3 women you see on the picture, they are some of them of the women who received training in sustainable forest management. So now they know how to prune and graft the trees, they know how to plant, and also what the trees do to protect their village and their families from flooding. As this example from Tajikistan shows us, forest management is about more than just managing trees. It has environmental, economic, and social aspects that should be considered. So there's a need to take a landscape perspective and replace pure technical forest management. The forest landscape restoration approach, along with the Bond Challenge, give a trend to look out of the forest and into the landscape. And just recently, the countries of Central Asia have come together and pledged several thousand hectares of forest area to be restored to the Bond Challenge during the Astana conference. Forest landscape restoration brings a new but needed perspective to traditional forest management and builds a platform for exchange on successful practices at a global level. Mr. Kandamir says, we, the local people, are obliged to save the forest for our children and grandchildren. For every tree that has fallen in this country, we need to plant at least 2 new ones. And for those of you who are interested, there's more information about this specific example available online on the Panorama website. And colleagues of mine will also have a side event tomorrow afternoon where you can find out more about some of the examples that are provided on these solutions. Thank you.